Senator Mason.
Madam Deputy President, over half a century ago, George Orwell famously wrote that those who control the past control the future. And Orwell was writing at the beginning of the Cold War, when communism, considered by so many of the best and the brightest to be way of the future, was just beginning to menace the citizens of Western democracies, while it had imprisoned hundreds of millions behind the Iron Curtain. Now in the year 2000, what was Orwell's terrifying vision of present and the future is now, very thankfully, just history. But as the world is still trying to come to terms with the horror and heal the scars of the 20th century, many of those cheerleaders of totalitarianism remain unrepentant, seeing the false idols of international socialism cast down from the altar and shatter. They're now finding new ways to denigrate their own society, shift the blame, obfuscate the past, and convert new generations to their creed. It's then with sadness, but without surprise, that I recently leafed through the Queensland high school syllabus of studies of society and environment, an amalgam subject taking over what in the past used to be called history and geography. When I went to the school in the 1970s, the focus of the school was education. Today it seems to be about indoctrination. Socialism, primarily because the people on this side of the chamber might be dead around the world, but it seems to be alive and well in the Queensland school curriculum. That safe haven and bastion of everything that is politically correct, intellectually trendy and very fashionably anti-Western. The Studies of Society and Environment syllabus promotes four concepts: democratic process, social justice, ecological and economic sustainability, and peace. It all does sound reasonable and harmless on the surface. Truth, that's right, not too much truth, Senator Brandis. But what students of years 1 to 10 are being fed, of course, is a steady diet of crude leftism masquerading as knowledge. Where's the balance? What we get in this curriculum is democratic process without liberal democracy, social justice without individual justice, ecological and economic sustainability without economic development, and peace without security. When Queensland school children are being taught that social justice seeks to challenge the inequalities inherent in social institutions and structures and to deconstruct dominant views of society, they are essentially told that our nation and society are evil, oppressive and unjust. They are taught self-loathing and alienation. What they are specifically taught, or not taught, is even more disturbing. Perhaps nothing shocked me as much in this 47-page document as its author's choice of people to study. On page 35, just wait for it, Senator McGorran, on page 35 of the syllabus, as part of the time, continuity and change section of the subject, students are required to know about contributions by diverse individuals and groups in Australia and Asian settings, with the following suggested by the Curriculum Council as worthy subjects of study: Henry Parkes, Enid Lyons, the Union Movement, Mao Zedong, Ho Chi Minh and people power in the Philippines. Now, there's nothing wrong with teaching our kids about Mao Zedong and Ho Chi Minh. I think we must. The youngest generation deserve to learn about the horrors of the past and the shameful contribution these two leaders made in making the 20th century the bloodiest in human history.
Mao Zedong murdered more people than Hitler.
That's right. Thank you, Senator Brandis, and he did. The problem, however, is that our children are far more likely to hear about agrarian reform, anti-colonialism, self-determination, rather than, to use your word earlier, Senator Ludwig, to use your word, rather than genocide.
Address the
which is
chair,
what it was,
please, Senator Mason.
Madam Deputy President, political prisons, starvation and total economic ruin. At best, they might hear that old, tired excuse from the left that you can't make an omelette without breaking a few eggs. And that over 60 million victims of the two dictators are but an inevitable hiccup on the way to some socialist pathetic nirvana. The left knows how it is. Madam Deputy President, the left had to kill 60 million people in order to free them. one can't escape the conclusion that this syllabus and many similar documents have been written by members of that generation that found it rather trendy to hang posters of Che Guevara in their bedroom, place copies in their bookshelves of the Little Red Book. That deluded generation who fell for the socialist dream and closed their eyes to totalitarian horror. And those of that generation now suffering from historical amnesia who deny that it all happened, Madam Deputy President, and of course they deny their own roles as aiders, abettors and cheerleaders of slaughter and deprivation. Some might say, who cares? What does it matter now, as we've left the 20th century behind and we've entered a new millennium? After all, we can't look to the past, we can't look back at the past, we've got to look to the future. This line of argument, thank you, Senator McGauran, this line of argument, alas, all too often becomes a convenient distraction for those who would rather have the world forget about their shameful role in the past. Let us beware of some of those who today preach so terribly sanctimoniously about human rights, social justice and diversity. The intellectual and moral cowards who yesterday closed their eyes to gulags and mass graves and loudly praised the butchers as the hope for humanity, today lack the moral capital to preach to our children on the supposed evils of the Commonwealth of Australia, one of the freest and most prosperous nations on earth. People whose consciences sleepwalked the 20th century make for bad and untrustworthy teachers. It's just possible that some might forgive the fact that the collectivist economies of the left impoverished hundreds of millions of people during the 20th century. And it's even possible that some people, like Senator Forshaw perhaps, might forgive those who naively thought that Mao and his mates were trying to build a better world, and that the Cold War wasn't about good and evil, it was about different sorts of societies. But no one with any conscience can easily forgive those...
Senator Forshaw, the language that you have just used is unparliamentary. I would ask you to withdraw it.
I withdraw, but I resent any suggestion that I would be an apologist for some of the actions of the people. And Senator Mason knows that he's on broadcast, and this is one of the cheapest tricks that any senator can pull.
Senator Forshaw, withdraw unreservedly, and I hope that you
I do withdraw unreservedly.
I hope that, Senator Mason, what you were saying is not what Senator Forshaw has interpreted.
That's correct, Madam Deputy President. But no one with any conscience can easily forgive those who are either knowingly or recklessly stood by as tens of millions were slaughtered in communist China. There's an old saying that victors write history. This obviously isn't the case in Queensland, where history continues to be written by history's losers. It's as if the 20th century didn't happen, or worse, the lessons to be learned were exactly the opposite to what experience and common sense might suggest. History should be written by the winners, not because we want to engage in pointless triumphalism or because we are so insecure that we want to shut out all the other voices. It's not even about celebrating our achievement. In fact, it's not about us at all. It gets back to Senator McGauran's point. Nothing. In fact, it is not. It's about past generations as well as future generations, Madam Deputy President. Nothing will give back to millions of victims their lives, freedom, dignity, but the least we owe them is the truth, as Senator Brand has said, the truth to be told about their lives and their fate in Queensland schools. And so it is also the children of today and generations yet unborn. The choices they will make will be theirs, but the most valuable legacy we can leave them is the truth about the past, so they themselves are able to ensure that socialism is not replayed disastrously in their lifetimes. Madam Deputy President, Chesterton once said that education is the soul of a society as it passes from one generation to another. Those who inflict on students documents like studies of society and environment under the guise of education commit a gross moral and intellectual crime against the past by making a mockery of history. But perhaps even worse, they also prejudice our future by letting down our children who, in our innocence, we entrust to history's failures.